Ladies and gentle guys, welcome to another episode of Why the Fuck Did I Buy a BMW? The old N54 curse is well and truly sinking its teeth into me on this one. As you would have seen if you watched the last video, I have blown the engine up in the car. Putting it plain and simple, it's the bottom end is left to chat, I believe. So we're on our way to recover it just now. There we go. We are at what I'm calling the crime scene. I still actually cannot quite believe that it's happened. Just because of all the time and effort that I've already put into this car. Now I'm going to need to pull the engine out of it, figure out what's wrong, and I'm hoping we might get away with a crankshaft and bearings, but we shall see. I'll get the camera set up now and get this thing on the back of the trailer. We're on. Let's get it back to the garage. I've only put two straps on, one in the front and one in the back, opposite each other, just because we're only going 5 minutes along the road. Well, 10 minutes along the road. So, get you back in the garage. This seems to be a reoccurring theme, this car just constantly in the garage, but we're back in, we're up in the stand. I probably shouldn't, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to start it up, we'll go underneath it and we'll see if we can sort of see. I'm pretty positive it's the bottom end, but let's have a look. I would say it's in there. It's honestly heartbreaking. I probably have said it already in this video, but the amount of time and effort I've already put into this car for it to now need the engine to come out is it's killing me, to be honest, thinking about it. But we're not going to cry over spilt milk, and we're just going to get the engine pulled out, hopefully get it out tonight. It's daylight out there. Let's see if we can get it out before I go to bed, pretty much. So let's get the front end off. I kicked things off by removing the wheel arch liners from both sides of the car. This meant I could access the bolts to then remove the bumper, disconnecting the fog lights, and then stupidly, one by one, bit by bit, I pulled apart the front end because I didn't realise you could take it all apart in one clip. So yeah, headlight off, then it's the next headlight to come off. I think there was 3 bolts holding these on, and then it meant I could move on to the crash panel, 4 nuts holding that on. Then I just supported the bottom of the radiator packs with a jack and a block of wood, just in case they dropped. I wasn't too sure, and then that's it off. Then it's off with the intercooler, the aircon condenser, the oil cooler and the radiator itself. Luckily, I'm quite glad that I didn't make too much of a mess of the floor with this, but yeah, pretty straightforward removal. Front end is pretty much stripped apart from the oil cooler down there. I'm just going to take that off from the oil filter housing. Now, in hindsight, obviously, I didn't get it all out last night. It's now the next day. But hindsight's a beautiful thing, because I wish I'd known this last night, because I would have got it done a lot quicker. I didn't realise that you could take the full front end off all in the one piece just by disconnecting the hoses, as opposed to me taking it apart individually. But every day's a school day. I've learnt my lesson for hopefully not needing to do this job ever again. So yeah, we'll just crack on. We'll start getting everything disconnected off that connects the engine to the body, and then we'll lower the engine and the gearbox down all in the one piece on the subframe. And hopefully it's not easier said than done. No, hopefully it is. I don't know. Let's just do it. Next up is the oil cooler pipes, just the one bolt bolting these in, give it a wee wiggle and that's it out, sticking the bolt back in so I don't lose it. And then I'm onto the power cables, just shifting them out of the way from across the top of the engine. Air filter's out the way now, meaning I could get the charge pipes out, and I actually broke a couple of wee bits on these, but we won't tell anyone. Then it's on to removing the scuttle panel, just so I can access the ECU wiring. And then once that's out the way, I just remove the strut brace, just to, again, give myself more space to work. With the ECU wiring all out, I actually had to strip the plug on the ECU for this to get the individual plugs that make up the main big plug out, but once that's done, get it all piled up on top of the block, and that's us on to the next job. Then it's out of the vacuum canisters, just 3 10mm bolts holding that in, and then I'm not too sure if I needed to take the coolant bottle out, but I got it shifted out anyway, just to make my life a bit easier. Then I'm back over to the other side, disconnecting wiring and just checking to see if there's anything else that will catch us when we drop the engine down. Underneath the car now, we had to get a wee bit of heat assistance for the front 2 mount bolts for the exhaust. Got them off and then moved on to the strengthening plate. Had to give the bolts a good hit with a hammer just to shock them because they were all pretty tight. So once that plate was out of the way, I could then move on to the rear exhaust rubbers, using my grips just to pull the rubbers off the centre section, and then as I moved further back, the rubbers were actually bolted onto the car. And after almost losing my teeth, the exhaust slides straight on out. With the exhaust out of the way now, I moved on to removing the exhaust heat shields just so I could gain access to the prop shaft. And before you remove the prop shaft, always mark it so that you put it back on the right way it comes off, because they are balanced. 3 bolts at the front, removed them, and then the 2 bolts for the supporting bracket, and that was us off. At the front of the car now, I move on to the strut brace, just getting the bolts out of that. 2 of the bolts were actually seized on, so I left it on the subframe, but now I'm on to the fuel pipes, getting them all disconnected, removing the bracket out of the way so I could get in at the connections. Then I'm onto the gear selector cable, just a 13mm nut and a horseshoe clip, and that way I can disconnect the cable and get it out my way. Pretty much now at this stage, everything that connects the engine, well, that's been connected to the engine and the body has been disconnected. So that's like all the wiring, the ECU and stuff like that, taking out that electrical box. Everything, vacuum lines, cables, plugs, everything is disconnected that needs disconnected. Prop shaft, the exhaust, which was an absolute nightmare to get off. Everything was just rusted as you would expect, but it's all off now. All I need to do next is disconnect the brake pipes from the front brakes, and then we are good to drop the subframe down with the engine and gearbox on. We're going to do this a wee bit sketchy. I do have a loan of an engine crane, but I can't find anywhere to hook the crane onto, so we're going to try it with a plank of wood and a trolley jack just to at least lower it down, and then I will take it from there and hopefully I don't kill myself. This time it was the brake pipes, so I got them disconnected. I actually just cut the pipes and I'll just put new ends on when I come to rebuild it, but yeah, got them disconnected. I completely forgot one last thing. Here's after me saying everything was disconnected. Forgot about the steering rack. So the steering column there has been unbolted, and I've unbolted it up there also. That's so that when I can lever on the bottom, lever that off the steering rack pinion, and then that slides further up the spline shaft of the interior steering column. But it's proven a wee bit difficult, so the hammer needs to come out and just give it a wee bit more persuasion. Oh, we're off! Just take a wee bit more persuasion than normal. We're finally all fully disconnected now. So I think, trying to do this methodically, although it could go totally wrong, I'm going to go underneath, put a jack underneath the gearbox, disconnect the gearbox mount, sit the gearbox on an axle stand, lower the gearbox down on an axle stand, sorry, and then come to the front, support the engine and subframe with the jack, and then lower it down onto axle stands, and then this plank of wood comes into action. What I think I'm going to do is put it from the front of the subframe down onto the gearbox sump. It is plastic, it might crack, but we're giving it a go. So that's the plan of action. Might be easier said than done, but let's find out. So I got scared thinking about the way I was going to do it with the axle stands, blah blah blah. So this is what I've done now, and I feel like it's a lot safer. I've got the engine crane slung on either side of the subframe, hopefully keeping it level so it's not going to tilt when I take the strut tops out. Well, I might take the strut tops out first and then the subframe bolts. And then, like you just saw there, the jack is just underneath the gearbox there. And I'll just lower the jack and the crane down a couple of inches at a time and just take my time with it. So let's see how we get on and hope I don't die. So I started taking the strut top nuts off, just one at a time, and I left one on either side. Then I'm down underneath onto the subframe bolts. I removed every single one of these and then went back onto my strut top nuts. And you'll soon see when I took the final nut off the strut top, the car decided to pop some stunts. Didn't like that. Did not like that one bit. So what had happened here, if you've not already figured it out, is because I've still got the car on all 4 axle stands, the combination of the rear suspension, the wheels and the parts that I've removed that have been put in the boot, as soon as I took that last nut off and there was no more weight in the front end, it just decided to pop a wheelie. So thankfully my neighbour Ross was on hand with a spare trolley jack to come round and put under the rear diff so we could crack on and get this engine out. Oh, Jesus. Good effort. That took a wee bit longer than expected, but we're out. What an absolute unit of a lump, to say the least. It went a wee bit wrong. Once the weight came out the front of it, the car started popping a wheelie on the back axle stand, so my neighbour Ross had to come round with his trolley jack just to put underneath the back of it, and I managed to wangle a wee helping hand out of him to just pull the lump out of the car. So hi, thanks very much. Now we need to get the gearbox off of it. I'll probably just throw that back underneath the car out of the way, and then we'll get, I think it's just these nuts here, one on this side and then one on the opposite side for the engine mounts. And then we should be able to lift the engine out and set it on the floor and try and figure out a way to get it high enough to get the sump off, or go and get the engine stand. I've made my life pretty difficult here. I don't know if you'll be able to see in there, but next on the list is, you can just see the head of that bolt there. So these are the bolts that bolt the torque converter onto the flywheel. So we need to take that bolt out and then turn the crankshaft and then look for all the other ones. I think there's normally about 6 of these bolts. I could be wrong, maybe more, but I think 6. And these bolts just bolt the flywheel onto the torque converter so that you can take the gearbox and the torque converter off at the same time. So I'll get these bolts off, and then that will mean heading on to the bell housing bolts and hopefully slide it off quite nicely. So I was right, all 6 bolts out the flywheel and torque converter. I just took that bell housing bolt out there. But now there's just these 2 bolts here, a couple more there and there. There's about 3 different size bolts on this, so yeah, just them to take out now, and then the gearbox should be ready to lift off. That has got to be the most sensible way I've ever taken a gearbox off with no manual handling whatsoever. That's my work rules kicking in there. But the torque converter, I was hoping would have came off with the gearbox to save all that mess. But the centre of the torque converter was stuck in the flywheel, so it was just a wee bit tight coming out. But that is the gearbox stripped. I think I'm going to go in and get some dinner, and then we'll come back out and get the engine out of the subframe. Okay, today's a new day. You'll be able to tell by the jumpers that it's another day. I couldn't be bothered coming back out after my dinner last night. So today's plan of action is get all the wiring stripped off of it, and then get the ancillaries unbolted, get the engine nice and light enough to get the engine stand bracket bolted on. We might need to go and get some new bolts that are long enough for it. So I get the wiring all off, all the ancillaries unbolted, and then hopefully lift the engine up off the subframe, and then we'll be good to stick it on the stand. Right, my plan didn't work there. It turns out you can't just take the wiring loom off all at once, so I'm just going to need to start stripping bit by bit until I can get all the loom unplugged. Like stupid things like the plug for the alternator is here. It's disconnected, but you can't get it off because the aircon pump's in the way. Make it make sense. So yeah, I'm just going to start stripping everything off top to bottom, and then hopefully I'll be able to get all the loom off pretty quickly, and actually it just means the engine will get stripped down a hell of a lot quicker as well, I think. So yeah, let's get into it. One thing I probably should have done at the very start was drain the oil out of it. So let's get the oil out, get the filter out, and see what sort of shavings are in there, if there is any, which I'm hoping there is. That looks incredibly satisfying, although it's heartbreaking at the same time. So that is definitely bottom end waste, I would call it. So happy days on that front. Don't know if that's picking that up there, but the filter has at least done its job, because every bit is just full of shavings, so I'm happy that we found that. I know I've said it a couple of times before already, but I am still truly devastated that this has happened to the car after all the work that's going on, that's went on with it. But weirdly, I'm happy about finding all that nice glitter shavings in the oil filter housing, so that is a positive, kind of, that the engine removal's not been a waste of time. So on that high note, I'm going to end the video here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and follow along for the next part, because I think this is going to become expensive. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Catch you in the next one.